As we approach week 9 of fantasy hockey, we've seen a lot of trends just in the past 10 games alone. We've seen a lot of high quality players come off of injury, which have really impacted some of the current players on their rosters, which we will touch on a couple in this must drop for week 9 video. We've also seen a ton of trends in terms of just player allocation, movement up and down the lineup, some people coming off injuries, which have really impacted their play early on, and some people, getting injured as well. So we've seen a ton of movement across the fantasy hockey universe over the past couple weeks. So let's get right into 7 players you absolutely must drop before week 9. Starting us off, we have Troy Terry at 44% owned. He's got 1 point in his last 7 games, and his peripherals have just been awful. Only 7 shots in his last 7 games. We've seen a massive decrease in average time on ice, which I don't like seeing at all out of Troy Terry. Somebody that's historically been a very, very good point producer in the National Hockey League. His average time on ice last year was around 19:22 and is now down to 17:58. And in his last 7 games, he's seen less than 17 minutes average time on ice in Anaheim. He's now down to line 2 with Adam Henrique and Alex Killorn. This guy is supposed to be the offensive engine for the Ducks. We've seen a couple injuries really impact them. They've really just, I'll talk about it in the next slide as well, come down to earth, especially offensively. And for Terry, it's just difficult to hold on to this guy right now. If he's not producing, he doesn't really offer too much outside of his scoring upside as well as his shot volume. And his shot volume is just not good at all for whatever reason. And the big dip in average time on ice is really scaring me away from Terry right now, especially in the last 7 games. Under 17 minutes is just not what you want to see out of a highly touted offensive talent like Terry. So for right now, I think in 10 to 12 team leagues, you can drop him. And even some 12 plus team leagues, depending on what's available on your wire, I think Terry is a drop going into week 9. We have another Anaheim Duck in Pavel Mintyukov. He's 37% owned currently. He's got 2 points in his last 7 games. And as we've seen, his peripherals have really started to drop off just in the past month of November here. As you can see, if you look at his October hits per game, he's up towards 2.3. His blocks per game are up towards 1.6. We thought we were going to get a massive kind of waiver wire league winning type upside player in terms of peripherals with Mintyukov, but they've started to dip down a lot, especially in the month of November. His shot volume is staying pretty consistent, which is, accurate based off of how much average time on ice he's getting. That's also stayed pretty consistent, as well as his power play time. He's continued to stay on power play 1, but his hits and block volume have really dipped off. The Ducks have come back down to earth offensively, like I said, with Terry, as well as defensively also. They're just getting absolutely peppered out there. They, again, have a couple injuries, no more Trevor Zegras right now for the foreseeable future. We've seen, again, Drysdale be out again on IR. And so just a lot of injuries have impacted the Ducks as well as their overall play. And like most rookies, we're going to see a little bit of inconsistency in their play. Mintyukov has been pretty good offensively throughout the year, and I still think he's a great option in 12 plus team leagues if you can hold on to him, especially depending on your defense situation. But I do think he is a drop in 10 team leagues and some 12 team leagues, depending on, like I said, what's available on your waiver wire. Up next, we have Evan Rodrigues of the Florida Panthers. He is 37% owned. He also hasn't been great as of late. 0 points in his last 8 games. His average time on ice is 15:56 since Bennett's return since November 10th. Only one of his last 5 games played, he's seen over 16 minutes time on ice. It's not just the scoring for Evan Rodrigues as well. His shots per game are down from 3.25 in October to around 2 in November. He's been demoted to power play 2. Things just seem to be trending down with Erod. I get that he's triple eligible and that he's still playing line 1 with Barkov and Reinhart, which still gives him a little bit of upside. We've just seen a big decline in terms of his time on ice, and then that big demotion down to power play 2 is not good for Rodrigues' stock going forward. I think if we continue to see this trend, he should be a drop for week 9. I think there's just better options available. I get the upside of playing on line 1 with Barkov and Reinhart. I just think with Rodrigues, based off what we've seen in the last little bit, especially with Bennett coming back, he seems to be trending downward. Up next, we have Oliver Ekman-Larsson, another defenseman. He's got 0 points in his last 5 games, and in 4 of his last 5 games, he's played under 18 minutes average time on ice. His peripherals haven't been great in his last 10 games either. 11 shots, 6 hits, and 9 blocks. He's now pair 3 and power play 2. He's just really trending down right now, guys, because of Montour and Ekblad being activated and put back into the lineup. So he's going to see a lot of his ice time cut into, especially at 5-on-5. He is still remaining on power play 2. Him and Ekblad are kind of both defensemen on that second power play unit, with Montour being on power play 1. I just don't see this trend changing with Ekblad and Montour coming back. I really don't see a lot of upside in Ekman-Larsson going forward, especially due to his average time on ice really being cut into, and his peripherals were nothing great to begin with. You really only had him for the point and power play upside, and just going forward, I think he's an absolute must drop going into week 9. Next is Chandler Stephenson of the Vegas Golden Knights. He's just coming back off of an injury. He's 26% owned currently. He's got 1 point in his last 7 games and 6 shots in his last 7 games played. If you had Stephenson roster on your team, it's probably not for the shot volume to begin with, but we've now seen a massive drop off in his hits per 60, which is down from 2.88 to 1.51 based off of last year. It might take a little bit of time for him to come back from his injury. I don't know the severity of it. I know he was out for a couple games, but in my opinion, there's just better peripherals and scoring options available. You probably have him in a deeper league. If you count faceoffs in your league, you probably have this guy rostered. I think that's totally fine if you want to keep him on your team. If you just need some faceoff volume, that's completely okay with me. But in terms of other peripherals and scoring, there's just better options available on your waiver wire. I think Stephenson should be a drop going into week 9 for 12+ team leagues. Our only goalie on this list is Karel Vejmelka. He's 26% owned, and his last 6 starts have not been pretty. He's 0-6 in his last 6. He's got an .857 save percentage and a 3.68 goals against average. He's allowed 4 or more goals in 4 of his last 5 starts. He's 47th in the National Hockey League with goalies of a minimum of 7 games played in goals saved above expected, which is not good. And Arizona's expected goal differential is minus 3.8, which is the 9th worst in the National Hockey League. But he has just blatantly lost the net to Connor Ingram. Ingram started 4 of the last 5 games. Vejmelka just doesn't seem to be at the level that he was last year. And everybody knows with goalies that have no volume and bad play have absolutely next to 0 value. So for me, Vejmelka is a drop going into week 9. Finishing up our list, we have Nick Paul of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's got 2 points in his last 10 games. He's line 3 and power play 1. You can't really tell that he's power play 1 because he doesn't really do much on power play 1. And again, just because he's playing power play 1 doesn't mean that there's upside. If you go and you watch any Tampa power play in the last 10 games, you'll see Nick Paul's job is to just stand in front of the net and screen the goalie. He has picked up the occasional power play point here and there, but for me, the peripherals just aren't enough to roster this guy. In his last 10 games played, he's had 18 shots, 5 hits, 5 blocks. There's just a ton of better options available to you. I just don't think, again, there's any type of upside for Paul going forward in terms of power play points, in terms of production as a whole. I get that he's had a better season than his previous one, but for me, Nick Paul is just a drop going into week 9. Go get yourself somebody with much better peripherals, whether it's shots, hits, or blocks, depending on your league settings, or just better scoring upside than a guy that's playing third line right now and will occasionally get a power play point here and there. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment down below who you think should be a drop going into week 9. Somebody that I considered was Johnny Gaudreau, but in the last 5 games, his stats actually haven't been too awful. We'll see how the rest of the week goes for him. I have him on one of my teams. He's incredibly frustrating right now if he's not putting up 1 to 2 points a night, so I understand that he is probably on the hot seat for most of you fantasy hockey owners, but let me know in the comments down below who else you think is a drop going into week 9. I love hearing your guys' opinions and feedback, but that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day.